For decades, Rush built their identity around precision, power, and a level of musical chemistry that felt almost impossible to replace. But after the loss of Neil Peart, something changed. Because behind closed doors, there was one question no one thought would ever need an answer. Could anyone ever step into that role? And then, a name started quietly circulating. Not a mainstream rock legend, not a predictable choice, but a drummer whose style, discipline, and creativity felt different. Anika Nilles. What made her stand out wasn't just skill, it was something deeper, something that reportedly caught the attention of people closest to the band. And the way this connection happened, that's where the story gets interesting. To understand how this even became a conversation, you have to go back to what made Rush so unique in the first place. Formed in the late 1960s, the band, featuring Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and Peart, was never just about music, it was about precision. Every drum fill, every transition, every live performance was built on a level of technical mastery that pushed boundaries. Peart wasn't just a drummer, he was a composer behind the kit. So when he passed away in 2020, it didn't just leave a gap. It left a void that many believed could never be filled. And for a while, it seemed like that was the end of the story. But behind the scenes, something unexpected was already beginning to take shape. After Peart's passing, both Lee and Lifeson made it clear they weren't interested in simply replacing him. In fact, they openly suggested that Rush, as fans knew it, was over. And that made sense. Because how do you replace someone who redefined what drumming even meant in progressive rock? But here's where things get complicated. Music doesn't just stop. Ideas don't just disappear. And over time, both members began reconnecting with instruments, with creativity, and with other musicians. Quietly, carefully. And during this period, a new generation of drummers was rising online, sharing complex rhythms, redefining technique, and gaining attention in ways that didn't exist decades ago. One of those drummers stood out more than most, and people started noticing. Anika Nilles wasn't trying to imitate anyone. That's what made her different. Her playing blended technical precision with groove in a way that felt modern, yet deeply rooted in musicianship. Through viral drum videos and collaborations, she built a reputation for being both innovative and controlled, two qualities that defined Rush at their peak. But that wasn't the real reason her name entered the conversation. It was the feel of her playing, the subtle timing shifts, the musicality behind the complexity, the kind of details only experienced musicians truly notice. And as clips of her performances spread, fans began asking a bold question. Could someone like her actually carry forward that legacy? At first, it sounded unrealistic. But then, the discussion got louder. And what really pushed things forward wasn't an official announcement. It was curiosity from both sides. Members of the rock community, industry insiders, and even longtime fans began connecting dots. Interviews hinted at openness to collaboration. Not a replacement, but exploration. And this is where things took an unexpected turn, because instead of looking backward, trying to recreate the past, there was a growing idea of moving forward with someone who brought a fresh perspective, someone who respected the legacy, without trying to copy it. And in that context, Nilles' name kept coming up. Not loudly, but consistently. And sometimes, that's how the biggest shifts begin. So why Anika Nilles? It comes down to three things. First, technical ability. Her control, independence, and rhythmic creativity align with the kind of complexity Rush was known for. Second, musical intelligence. She doesn't just play fast or complicated patterns, she builds ideas. She tells a story through rhythm. And third, individuality. This might be the most important factor, because anyone stepping into that space can't be a copy. They have to be themselves. And this is where many drummers fall short. But Nilles didn't. She brought something new, something that didn't compete with the past, but complemented it. And that subtle difference, it changes everything. Now, let's be clear. There has been no official confirmation that Rush has chosen a new drummer, and both Lee and Lifeson have continued to approach the future carefully, often emphasizing respect for what they built together. But that's exactly what makes this story so compelling. It's not about a replacement. It's about possibility, about how music evolves, even after defining moments. and how new talent can emerge in ways no one expects. Because sometimes the next chapter doesn't come from trying to recreate history, it comes from reimagining it. And that's where names like Anika and Nilles enter the picture, not as substitutes, but as signals of what could be next. In the end, this isn't just a story about a band searching for a drummer, it's about legacy, about how something as powerful as Rush doesn't simply disappear, it transforms. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. The greatest musicians don't leave behind roles that need to be filled. They leave behind standards that inspire the next generation to rise differently. So whether or not Anika Nilles ever steps into that world officially, the conversation itself says everything. Because it proves one thing: the influence of what came before is still shaping what comes next. And maybe the real question isn't who replaces the past, but who has the courage to redefine the future.